For this video, you find me with the 2022 Genesis GV70. This version has the V6 3.5 liter twin turbocharged engine with all-wheel drive, and it also has the Sport Prestige package, which means that this one is fully loaded. This one also has the Matterhorn white premium paint with the Sevilla red interior. So altogether with delivery, this compact luxury SUV has a price tag of $65,045. And in this video, I'll give you my likes and dislikes about this premium SUV, and I'll also share all of the small important details that you need to check out before you buy. And if you learn anything new while watching this or have any feedback, make sure to leave a comment down below. And if you like this style of video review, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell button to see more videos like this one. I'll give you my summary up front first. This Genesis GV70 is a delightful compact SUV that oozes luxury from everywhere. It has a more than reasonable power plant pushing out 375 horsepower and 391 pound-feet of torque. It has driving characteristics that can morph depending on your mood, and the amount of technology, comfort, and convenience will change your expectation of what should belong in an SUV of this price point. That's where I'll start this review on the inside, because there are so many features and neat little details packed in here that will make you think you stole this car for the price that you paid. First off, the interior design is so unique and eye-catching, it makes the interior of other luxury SUVs look boring. In this Genesis, there's a couple of strong themes going on. There's the oval theme, where many things have an oval shape around the dash, the carbon fiber trim, the door handles, and the glove compartment handle. And I think there's a secondary steampunk theme going on around here as well, and you can see it in the default instrument cluster design, the chrome trim that cleverly hides the vents and wraps around the entire dash and the door cards, and also the intricate rotary dials for the gear shifter and for the infotainment system. Thematically speaking, the only thing that seems to stick out of place in this car is this enormously wide 14.5-inch infotainment screen. And in my opinion, this is the best screen that I've tested thus far. The home screen is pretty gorgeous. There's a rotating pool of photos that populate the screen. I believe it's related to the time of day and the weather. And then it blends into the navigation on the right-hand side. Hyundai vehicles have the same style of presentation, and since Genesis is the luxury arm of the Hyundai brand, you can see that the software is built from the same bones. The layout looks familiar, the font is very similar, if not the same. There's even the same sounds of nature feature that you could find in Hyundais, like warm fireplace. The one downside to this infotainment system is that it doesn't yet have wireless Apple CarPlay or wireless Android Auto. It has a wireless charger in here, but you can't have wireless Apple CarPlay yet. It's confusing. Don't know why Genesis or some of the more premium Hyundais don't include wireless Apple CarPlay yet, but hopefully that's going to change in the near future. Navigating through the screen is pretty easy. This is a touchscreen. The placement of the screen can be a bit awkward because it's at a good distance to keep it within your periphery while driving, but it is just close enough that you can still use your fingers. But I prefer to use this rotary dial. Now you could rotate it, you could toggle it, and you could also use the touchpad that's on the surface. Normally, I don't like touchpads, but since this is not the only way of entering information into the infotainment system, then I don't mind it at all. If you want to change the station or change the volume, you could do so on the steering wheel buttons. You could also do it on the scroll wheels right above the rotary dial. If you want a third way of interacting with the screen, you could do so with the set of dedicated shortcut buttons. So you've got the map, nav, a star button that can be customized to whatever you need, the radio, media, and setup buttons. And right above those buttons, you find the HVAC controls, and it looks pretty fantastic. It's tough to get excited about air conditioning controls, but when it looks this good, I don't mind talking about it. And on the screen, you find the ability to change the heated and ventilated seat settings, your heated steering wheel controls, and also which vents are being used. There's one more piece of detail within this area, and that's the fingerprint sensor. And this is an industry first, and I'm kind of surprised that no other cars have utilized this already. But basically, once you've gone through the registration process, you've registered your fingerprint, and you also have your smartphone, you can basically get in the car by unlocking via your smartphone and then just register your fingerprint, and then start the engine. You don't even have to have your physical key anymore. And once you start the car, there's some really fancy things going on the instrument cluster that I don't think has ever been done in any other car. Cars normally have physical gauges that look three-dimensional, but until very recently, a bunch of brands have started using fully digital instrument clusters, so everything looks kind of flat. Everything looks two-dimensional. So if you're unsatisfied with the level of dimension on your digital display, Genesis has made a 3D display. I can't capture this on camera, but if you're sitting here and looking at it, there's a level of depth that's very visible. It's almost like there's several layers of screens superimposed on each other. It's a really cool effect. It reminds me of the Nintendo 3DS, which emulate that 3D experience without having to wear 3D glasses. And that's almost the same effect here because I'm not wearing 3D glasses and I can see a 3D effect on the fully digital instrument cluster. Now, whether you have the upgraded 3D display or not, I really like how Genesis has cleverly used the cameras on the side view mirrors. When you turn on the blinker, the camera feed will be shown in one of the gauges. This feature has been available in some Hyundai vehicles, and I'm really glad to find it here as well. That feature is only available if you have the surround view monitor, of course, and with that feature, you can get a 360-degree view from the 4 cameras around the car. And there's a couple of cool things you could do with that ability. One is that you can get a perspective view around the car, so that really helps when you're parking. And the second one is that you can remote view into your car at any time with your smartphone. Now, I'm kind of a paranoid when it comes to parking my car in public, so with that feature, I can at least check in on my car at any time. As for the seating in the GV70, these are some of the finest seats I've come across. They're very comfortable and supportive. They're finished with Nappa leather while the inserts are made of suede. There's a 16 power adjustment on the driver's seat and a 12-way power adjustment for the passenger. The front seats are heated and ventilated. And one bonus here is the Ergo Motion feature, which is basically a seat massaging feature. And you can access it via this button over here. And just in case you need to know what you're pressing, Genesis has made these buttons touch sensitive. So even if you're grazing the buttons, the seat map pops up on the infotainment screen to preview what that button does. This is another small but awesome attention to detail that makes this SUV truly unique. There's 2 extra features that are also awesome about the seats. The first one is that there's 2 adjustment buttons on the front passenger seat. This makes it easier for the driver or the rear passenger to move the seat around to make for more room. And the second cool feature is that when you put the car into Sport or Sport Plus mode, the side bolsters will actually move in to hug you more, so it's more supportive for when you're going through those back roads. As for the rear seats, even though this is a compact SUV, there's a decent amount of room for the rear occupants at 37.2 inches of legroom. There's plenty of comfort here too. The outboard seats are heated. There's a manual sunshade, HVAC controls, and 2 USB ports and a 115-volt plug. This GV70 also has standard panoramic roof, so not a bad place to sit back here at all. And to get into the cargo space, there's a button to open up the hatch by the rear wiper. You'll find 28.9 cubic feet of space behind the second row and a total of 56.9 cubic feet of space with the second row folded down. Moving to the outside, the Genesis GV70 looks like a proper luxury car. First of all, the Matterhorn white matte paint is a head-turning finish. It's a $1,500 added cost, but it's worth it if you want to stand out just a bit more. Just don't take this car to your automatic car wash because it does take a little bit more care to keep this paint looking nice. At the front of the GV70, the grille is very bold. The split headlights and daytime running lights give it that unique Genesis identity. Around the side, you'll find the upgraded 21-inch wheels sitting in front of the big brake hardware with the word Genesis on the caliper, though it's too bad that the back brake caliper is undone to the same style. There's a strong character line stretching from the hood all the way to the back, where you'll find the same split light design and big dual exhaust tips. If you skip out on the Sport Prestige package, the front and rear fascia is slightly revised with smaller openings for the inlets and exhaust areas, but overall it's both strong and capable looking designs, which is a telling sign of how it actually drives. Speaking of which, let's go for a drive. So let's go for a drive, and I'm going to go through most of the drive modes here. I'm going to focus primarily on the comfort, sport, and sport plus modes. In comfort setting, which is what we're in right now, this is the default setting when you first turn on the car. So you could tell you're in comfort mode because of the dials. This has a more beautiful bronze design, again, more of that steampunk theme. The suspension is also softened, and I will say that the ride quality in here is really, really good. I think even better than some Lexus cars. So yeah, Genesis, I think you've done a really good job here in dialing the tuning on the suspension, because this feels really nice to ride. The steering is a little bit on kind of like the numb side, but that's to be expected with luxury SUVs like this one. It's also worth noting that there's a lot of sound deadening in this car, and it feels really quiet in here. You don't hear a lot of wind noise, and I'm not on the highways, but I have driven this through the highways a bunch, and you can't really tell how fast you're going because it's super quiet in the cabin. Some cars you could really tell when you've gone over 80 or 90 miles per hour, and not saying that I've gone over 90 miles per hour in this car, but if you did, it would be pretty quiet in the car. Power-wise, this has a pretty hefty 3.5 liter twin turbo engine, making 375 horsepower and 391 pound-feet of torque. That is a lot. Now, the default engine, or the base engine, the 2.5 liter turbo, that's also found in a bunch of other Hyundai cars like the Hyundai Sonata N-Line and also the Hyundai Santa Cruz. If you want to see any of those reviews, you could see it up here or in the description box below. But basically that base engine, I think, would be enough for most people, because that's already making 300 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. But if you want to have the biggest, the baddest engine that you can get for the Genesis GV70, the 3.5 liter twin turbo is it, because this thing is packing a punch, man. And to showcase that, let's do a quick 0 to 60. Let's put ourselves in Sport Plus mode, and that's going to deactivate the traction control. I'm gonna put my left foot on the brake here. We're gonna build up revs up to 2,000, and we're gonna release. $60. Wow, that is quick. Now we're going to go to sport mode first before we go to Sport Plus. But with sport mode, a couple of things change. The first noticeable thing is that these side bolsters will actually stiffen up, or it'll actually hug you a bit more. So again, when we're going through these curves, you're more supported laterally, which is really cool. And the other thing with sport mode is that the engine tuning is a little bit more aggressive. It's a bit more proactive in changing the gears, and also the steering feel is a bit more heavy. So I like that. That's indicative of sports cars or performance-oriented cars. It's that the steering wheel or the steering feel is just a little bit heavier. And the suspension, you could also feel that it's a bit more firm. So this is not quite a sports car feeling car, but it's definitely much improved versus the comfort setting or the snow or the eco settings. Now, if you go to Sport Plus mode, that kind of tunes the engine a bit more aggressively, and it also makes the 8-speed automatic transmission a bit more lively. It'll try to downshift a bit more gears compared to sport mode, and it just knows that when you're somewhat on the brakes or hard on the brakes, again, it's going to be more proactive. It's trying to put you into the proper power band so that you could accelerate more easily. Really cool how the different driving modes significantly alters the driving characteristics of this SUV. You can have it as docile as you want, in comfort setting, or you could be as aggressive as you want in Sport Plus setting. So it's like 3 different vehicles in one, and I love that. I will also say that the handling feels much more improved in the Sport Plus and Sport settings. The suspension is more firm, the steering feels more connected to the ground, but I will say that in Sport and Sport Plus modes, It isn't as comfortable because the transmission does feel like it's shifting a bit more abruptly. So sometimes you'll feel like there's just some unnecessary bucking because it doesn't really know which speed it needs to be in based off of the speed that you're traveling. So for most of the time, I like to keep it in comfort mode because, again, the transmission shifts just a little bit more lackadaisical, I guess. Also, the suspension is just nicely softened and the steering feel is a bit lighter. Now, you could also tune those different driving parameters if you want, because there is a custom setting in here. So you can adjust how lively the engine is, how firm the suspension is, and also how heavy the steering feel will be. So overall, this Genesis GV70 has been a delight to drive. Performance-wise, this thing packs a real punch. It looks beautiful outside and in, especially on the inside. It's unlike any other luxury SUVs that I've been in. This is a very unique looking vehicle, again, on the outside and also on the inside. I love the material selection in here. The Nappa leather feels great. The oval design is really unique. And also, I like that steampunk design, you know, with the rotary dial, the gauges. I love the infotainment screen. There's plenty of information on there. There's two downsides, really. The first one is that no wireless Apple CarPlay. I mean, there's just no good reason to not include that. There are kits available that you could buy for not a lot of money so that you can get wireless capability. But why that's not included in here just doesn't make much sense. The second one is that because this is such a big screen and there's plenty of menu systems and methods of putting in information, it does get a little bit cluttered at times. So sometimes I look at the screen and there's just so many things to pick to the point where it's like information overload. So I feel like there's a fine balance for infotainment design where you have to provide a lot of information but still keep it on the simple side so that it's relatively easy to use while you're driving. And as for the ride and handling qualities, this feels like a really polished SUV. I mean, this is, in my opinion, the best riding SUV, compact SUV that I've driven so far. It is truly fantastic, and I highly recommend, if you're even thinking about getting into a Genesis GV70, this car just feels pretty damn fine, and I like it a lot. Well, there you have it. That's my review of the 2022 Genesis GV70. If you've learned something or liked the video, make sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified anytime I make a new video. Let's wrap it up right there. My name's Hanson. This has been the 2022 Genesis GV70, and I'll see you in the next one.